Hey, to talk about mental health and people who are stressing out on the internet regarding the coronavirus and such, all kind of anxieties and fears, which some already had because of other things that they've encountered. People who, as a whole, divorces, people have snapped who were once, law enforcement, everything's closing down, businesses are closing down. LU, Liberty University, was going to not have the kids come back, but instead they decided to let them come back. And when I tell you that there's so many people here that are really ill, like can't maintain a bowel movement, trying to work through it, on drugs, trying to cope as well. And that I really, I mean, they have a few hospitals that seemingly are small, but I honestly, just my few times in the emergency room, I can really see them as equipped to handle some of what I've been seeing. And it could be because we're from a bigger city and they do things differently because normally a small town is pretty quiet. And it, as well, they have opened community access network, a new clinic and such, which allows for people to come in and see doctors, and they have a place where you can shower if you have a very small distribution center, which I did go to see what they actually offered, as I would do in any town, because I like to know if I meet someone or where they can get the help from. But the people seem to be a little bit disqualified, or I shouldn't say disqualified, underqualified, compared to what I'm accustomed to seeing. That was my first reaction, was that, man, this does not look like what we're accustomed to when you go into a doctor's office. On the other hand, a little bit over in Forest, Virginia, which is where my mom got her treatment during the time of her being diagnosed with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's near the end, the doctors were, the office was a lot neater. It was a lot more professional. Uh, there was some bedside manner, and they seemed to genuinely care. Um, so you were treated with respect and such, which I did not see the same on that side of town where the community access network is, because it seems to be, to me, what I would deem to be not so a nicer side of town. It seems a little rough, a little too rough for my taste. So downtown, visiting here or there are was a little disappointing in some ways because uh, though the buildings and the apartments and different things that they have started to build look nice, and apparently they have some lofts and whatever have you, it's quiet. They have a few small bars, if you for people who like bars, and they have a small group, a very small group of people there as well, which I haven't frequented obviously, but I've walked past there because I like to see what's happening in the town, and I like to see the growth, etc. Um, they do have, the place along the water where you can walk and sit outside, but it seems to be more like, if you're from New York, the Village area in some ways, where the people have a different lifestyle. Not all, but some, and a few churches are starting to adopt that same. Here in a town that is extreme, which sure is not going so well for some, especially when they didn't even want an amusement park. So, and I think that they were afraid that it was going to attract the wrong kind of crowd and cause havoc in the town and, arrest and such, which is understandable considering most people want a town that you can live in and raise your kids with some respect and some manner, as did most of us. And in all honesty, it was one of the reasons why school, etc. Fortunately, the town did not yield that we're hoping for. There's still some here that are believing for ministry, not necessarily in the town anymore, because there's been a great deal of disappointment, even when it comes to the churches and the clergy and different things that things didn't exist. It was kept under control, I guess, or it wasn't really um, it didn't go untreated or undealt with. What we're not seeing here. So the caliber, the character, the integrity, a lot of it has. Uh, Certainly for those of us that are used to and had a desire to own our own home, the businesses are doing terrible. They are closing down. They are laying people off. I heard something about not knowing if that pertains specifically to taxes, but I think we need relief checks beyond taxes because the job market here is horrible. Other than a few temp jobs that might pay you um, to maybe at a Kroger store. It's just uh, certainly with the coronavirus, people are trying to stay in. A few did try to go to a grocery store. Some were wearing a mask. Um, Others are um, trying to get in and get out as soon as possible. But you can still see that the people, some still look like they're doing okay. Some look like they're doing okay. And it's really weird as a whole. If you looked at the internet, the hospitals, the staff, a lot of them are probably being overworked because if they're in a crisis situation, because they are trying to handle the situations. But the few times that I went into the emergency room, they seem to be, kind of get you in, get you out. Do a little bit of checking here or there, but not something that was the same as like, man, you're in the emergency room, oh my God, and like really grabbed in and thrown quickly and urgent kind of care. So, I don't know, like the churches for the first time in our lives have closed down, and we're not used to that. Usually, the church is where people go to get laid hands on and get prayed over when they're sick and things are transpiring. But it seems quite the opposite now because the sin and the different things that the people struggled with, the attacks, the demonic attacks, satanic attacks, have gotten to the pulpit. And that's a scary place to be in. So, not sure what the people are going to do. I mean, at one point we were praying, and now the people are frowning on, we don't believe in prayer, we don't want prayer, which is crazy to not want prayer because you're breathing God's breath that He blew into man. But that's the attitude of some of the people. Is why, with the people being diagnosed with different diseases and such, they have gone into the spirit realm and attacked different ones. Yet we are believing God that those attacks, hearing vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, are not only going to experience the vengeance of God because He will vindicate us, but will have no effect on our personal health as God restores and remedies the situations. But when I tell you, like, it's not just physical attacks, they're mentally ill. Some of them have been reprobated. I mean, completely nuts. And the privacy of the people it is so invaded, it is so disgraceful. I'm not sure what they're looking for, but when I tell you, it is a mess. That their mindset and their thoughts are so far from normal. Like, I don't know who would think that. I mean, like, people are trying to do things in your life and make choices that aren't in a position to make choices in your life. You know what I mean? Like, who are you? You know what I mean? And it's sad to see how they are because, like I said before, people 20, 30 years ago, even family members, like, have no choices. Like, no, they're not listed on anything. They're thinking the worst thought. Set. I mean, their mind is racing and going. Depression certainly is the birth for horrible thoughts. Usually, the remedy that the doctor will give you is depression medication, and it will balance the chemistry in your brain, which will allow you to start thinking better. But most of the places that the people and the position, I mean, the places that the people are staying in, the suggestions that they're making, the people are hostile because they're offering like a shelter or shelter or housing. People, I mean, most people don't want housing unless they've grown up in housing, but that's just, they want other options. They want a job. They want a salary. They want a business. They want own homes, and they're being forced in some ways to settle for or accept housing or stay in a shelter, which is absolutely horrid. Um, Stagnation, to put it mildly. I mean, literally, like people's footsteps standing on your head, standing is, when I tell you there's no honor for anybody, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your salary is, it doesn't matter what your career was. They're just disrespectful all the way around. It's sad to watch. Degradation, if it's not dealt with, it gets worse. And ultimately will kill who you are as a human being if you allow it. I mean, are listening to it, and people who are moving to New York, if they have families, they're moving them back south. We're trying to get these homeless people off the street. And how do they get on the street is probably something that they need to address. Because how inhumane is it to take these people's take their homes, because they're getting older or spinning down and they can't afford health care. How inhumane is it to kill somebody with their organs? So even people who are like in the spirit realm that were supposed to do the mending, etc., are doing quite the opposite and trying to just really bamboozle and out of what they need, which is breeding ground for witchcraft and root work, and completely you have become a rebellious house. It is really horrid to see even people who are supposed to be in the ministry, men and women of God both, are not so godly. Hearing "for I've not sent them" is in the atmosphere, and seeing just how lewd and disgraceful they are. It is, when I tell you that your faith in God is being hit on every side, and that most of these people are so hung out or strung out on drugs that their behavior is so lewd and disgusting. Like they've never been around apostles. They've never been around, they've never been around apostles. They've never been around bishops. They assume, seemingly, that everybody has been on drugs. We haven't. And so what do you do, like, in this? Obviously, and I got before the Lord yesterday, thank God. And we lay prostrate before the Lord as well. But when I tell you as a whole, like, people who live a holy life, who don't do drugs, who really live godly, they aren't getting drunk. They aren't watching porn. They don't have those thoughts. Amongst the people that are always walking in darkness, it's very hard to make friends. Especially people who need deliverance. Because even as I can tell what you wrestle with. Most people don't want to be around people who have demonic influences all the time. Because you'd be looking at me and I'm still experiencing that thing that's holding you captive. And so, we need deliverance. We believe God. We pray. We hope that you get to a place where we'll hear you say Jesus is Lord. Even as I'm speaking now, crack addictions, coke addictions, or whatever, they are everywhere, no matter where you go. And I know a lot of us don't like to be around it. It's the truth. And they take offense and they do all kinds of things because they're demons. But for the most part, most of us would prefer to be around those who live godly and those who live holy. I believe that even in living God and being God's anointed, you still need to be in a place where you can replenish, where you can need to be in a place where you can be prayed back into the virtue of God, the strength of God, and all that in there is. You need to be strengthened, and you need to have prayer partners and prayer warriors and all that you can do to re-strengthen you. Certainly getting a few people together who know how to really pray and have power and authority and all that in there is important. Don't come to me if you're on crack. Call yourself wanting to pray over me because you need deliverance. I don't want to touch the unclean. Unless it's for the sake of, unless you're in my prayer line and I'm praying for you, or something like that. But for those of us, again, who live godly, we want people who also live godly. We want people who are Holy Ghost filled and fire baptized. We want people who have the authority and the power in their mouth, who know how to pray out hell. We want people who know how to lay hands on the sick and see them recover. We know how to take authority over the atmosphere. We want people who know how to raise up the prophets of God. Put the prayer words in there. Part of what is needed. And you guys be careful on this internet, on YouTube, etc., because I'm seeing transference even during those channels. So pray about the portals, the things that you are privy to, your internet, your phone, your TVs, anything, a portal that the enemy can use. Pray, pray, pray. I can't emphasize it enough, even in the places that you dwell in, because there's been a lot of privacy violations. There's been a lot of demonic mess. There's been coercion. There's been extortion. There's been corruption. You